And we're live. Hey, everyone. Welcome to the Partner Matrix webcast. We're really glad that you're here, and thanks for taking the time out of your Friday to take a listen and just spend a little bit of time kind of talking about the channel. We've got a good one for you today. It's called Unlocking Success: How to Create Value in Fintech Partnerships. Let's make some quick introductions. I'm Vaughn Mordecai. I'm the Chief Revenue Officer for MindMatrix. MindMatrix is a partner management and automation platform, if you've not heard of us. And let the other two people on the call introduce themselves as well.
All right, Vaughn. Should I go ahead or Lincoln? You want to jump?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. So hi everyone. My name is Akash. I lead go-to-market strategy at MindMatrix, and biggest chunk of my role is to manage and work with our global partners like Lincoln. And I think I'm really excited about our topic in hand because when Lincoln and I chatted a month ago, I remember. And we decided that, hey, not many people in our industry talk about specifically on fintech partnership, because this is really hyper specialized industry and not many people have prior experience. But I'm glad Lincoln brings a very decent experience in managing global partner program at a fintech startup, if I'm not wrong, Lincoln. So I'm really excited to have you and talk about a fintech partnership in our today's podcast. Over to you.
All right.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Vaughn and Akash. Thank you for having me first and foremost. Hello, everybody out there in Partnerland. It's great to be here today. And I appreciate the opportunity to speak about fintech partnerships in the indirect space. It's an exciting topic, sometimes misunderstood or very rarely talked about. And yeah, I relish the opportunity today. So thank you so much.
All right, cool. So Lincoln, let's have you just give a quick overview about you and why you're the expert in this, and about your business and how you got to this moment. That would be really useful for everyone listening.
Yeah, so that's a great question. Yeah, of course. Yeah, I mean, I for the last 3 years up until the beginning of this year, I helped build a fintech partnership program and a startup here in the UK. We de-siloed the business and ran indirect with RevOps and operations, etc., which proved to be very successful. We ran about 70% of all the commercial revenue through the company by the time I left. We boarded thousands of accounts and was very successful. People started reaching out to us organically as individuals and companies to do advisory and assessment work to myself specifically. Started as Aris as a side hustle in August last year, and I've been working with clients ever since. Qualified in February, and here we are.
All right, cool. So I'm gonna ask Akash really quickly. There are a lot of different topics we could be talking about. Why fintech? Why is this top of mind for us, Akash?
So I think, Vaughn, as I mentioned, first of all, we didn't have any previous podcast or blog written specifically for fintech. And we actually, when I look at our own partner ecosystem, I don't find anyone getting specialized or have a good chunk of experience within partnership. So this is really when Lincoln and I discussed and chatted, I thought this could be a great value add to our existing clients and audience or listeners. So this is how this whole discussion started. We wrote a co-authored blog on the same topic. So after this podcast, if someone is interested to go deep, they can reach out to our website and find our co-authored blog that Lincoln and I have written on specifically fintech partnerships.
Yeah, that's a good nod to a really great article. Okay, so Lincoln, I have to ask this question. If you've looked for a job, okay, and a lot of people have over the last few years, okay, and you're looking for a job in partnerships, and you're looking for that ideal role, everything says you must have experience in X. Okay, if you're looking for that channel role, if it's a cyber, they're going to say, oh, we really want someone in cyber, if it could be restaurants for all it matters, and if you haven't worked in a restaurant as a partner operator, then you're not going to get a nod. It's a tough environment. Fintech has always been a little bit different. It's always been not worse, but it's always been more rigid than the rest. Is that just them kind of thinking too much of themselves, or is there something there that if you have that fintech experience, it really drives your outcomes?
Yeah, it's a really great question. I guess you're looking at a couple of points there, Vaughan. Partnerships are known as quite a horizontal motion, as in, they're an umbrella motion. They cover and glue together most departments, or should most departments in a business. An indirect motion I call, as the Zapier of business. They're the connector, they're the bridge. But then you end up working in a vertical, as you're alluding to. So, fintech is an interesting one because it's a highly regulatory space and vertical, of which they speak their own language. Simple as that. I mean, I had when I first got into that particular SaaS vertical, I spoke very little of that language, and it's a steep learning curve when you're in that, because it is we're regulated here in the UK by the FCA, the Financial Conduct Authority. So you have to keep abreast of those changes. You have to be comfortable working in that environment horizontally and then vertically, and it's sometimes a vertical that's shrouded in a little bit of mystery because it is such a technical vertical.
You're the man of mystery.
Yeah, with a lot of, and I think that's the thing that most people just don't understand unless you're actually in it. It's a utility a lot of the time as well. It's like a light switch on the wall. You expect it to work because it's a fundamental of every business, especially things like payment gateways, online payment gateways, and things like that. Unless they're broken, nobody really thinks or talks about it. It's just meant to happen. So when it comes to partnering in that vertical, you tend to get a lot of transactional partnerships, which tend to be integrated partnerships. And then it's then the better ones then try to make them transformational based on those deep relationships that you need to run an actual partnership.
So which came first, the chicken or the egg for you? Which came first, the fintech understanding or the channel understanding? Which one did you have to pick up on?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'd already had a very good mentor when I started out in channel and indirect, sort of 9 to 10 years ago. So those motions were understood. It's then about understanding the environment that you're going into with fintech. I think that's quite a big one. Understanding that environment, how they work, the acronyms of which there are literally pages, and then how that system works. So for me, definitely the horizontal, the partnership side of things, and understanding how that works, and then the vertical, understanding how that works, and essentially putting those two together to create the preferred outcomes.
That's really interesting. I like that. Okay, so you mentioned just briefly some of the different types of partnerships that exist in the fintech space. You mentioned SIs. Why don't you talk a little bit more about that? I mean, a lot of folks are just knocking around in traditional tech, or they might be in cyber, or some different things like that. How do those fintech partnerships differ in terms of the types of partners that you're working with?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, you have your, like any partnership vertical, Vaughan, you have your co-sell, your co-market, distribute, resell, etc. But I think on a micro level, when you're talking about fintech, we drill down to banking partnerships. Fintech essentially enables banks to do what they do faster, cheaper, safer, and simpler. You have a lot of very strong joint value propositions with tech. In tech as well, tech partnerships, either in software or hardware. Retail partnerships is a big one as well. ERP systems, enterprise resource planning systems are really big for gateways, a customer front-facing or back-end e-com integrations, for example, for improved data flow. So we're talking about insurtech and things like that as well. where underwriting is a big example. Every account that gets boarded within PSP, a payment service provider, needs to be underwritten by a bank because essentially they hold the risk on the account. So, the InsurTech system and vertical is actually quite big in that. You do have pitfalls, obviously. You've got reg compliance and, weak integrations happen. They do break. That's generally when you hear from your partners first and foremost.
What happens when that happens? I mean, does
Yeah,
it just
essentially
take everything down around you?
It depends where it is. If it's on a foundational level, so we're talking about the acquirers themselves that do the gateways themselves for online. Then chaos reigns. You have 50, 100 calls a minute asking what's happening, because payments are integral, especially to things like retail and hospitality businesses who need those transactions immediately. And there's some of those doing millions a day. So we're talking again a very high. We had Pizza Hut, for example. We looked after all their Apple Pay, and they were doing 45 billion transactions a month. So that's the kind of levels of tech and dependency that we're talking about. So things like UX and UI have to be absolutely spot on. Those integrations have to be strong, because if they go down, it affects literally millions of businesses.
Wow, amazing. Yeah, I hadn't thought you mentioned something I found really interesting. I hadn't thought about the regionality of the partnerships. You kind of often think about the big names that get involved with this, but I hadn't even considered there's a regional partner managing all the local little tiny mom and pop type restaurants and things like that.
Yeah.
That's really.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, there's 5.5 million businesses in the UK, and 94% of those are SMB level. And most of those need processing. So, you are covering a very, very wide area.
Okay. So you found your way into a fintech company. You have a channel background, and now what? How do you create, as the person coming into that as a channel manager or whatever, how do you create that value to your partners through a program in an area that's that complex?
Yeah, that's a great question. The competition is high, first and foremost. I think when you're talking about those integrations, especially to payment gateways, online payment gateways, once these integrations are done, generally customers are very sticky. So they will, again, if it doesn't break and it works, generally you've got them as a customer for a long period of time, and that can be anywhere between 18 to 36 months minimum. Which is great, but then that means competition's very high and there's very little churn out, and it also means that you don't get a lot of opportunity to actually go after those target accounts, and that all then comes down to timing. When are they at the end of their contracts? When are they looking to innovate, for example, because of their growth rate? Do they have a feature gap? Do they need feature gap advancement because they're lacking something that their competitor don't have, for example? So that was probably stacking on top of one another. That's probably what we're looking at. Innovation and feature gap advancement's probably the big one. Customer UI and UX, lots of big companies out there. Customers are leaving them and churning out quite regularly simply because of their UX and UI. Market reach is another one. Cost efficiencies always. Analytics, especially that data sharing analytics is a big one as well. So if you stack them on top of one another, that's probably what sort of the key value or business propositions that drive that mutual success to fintech partnership.
Yeah. So let's talk business and value proposition. I mean, depending on where you're at in tech partnerships or tech channels, sometimes it can be entirely transactional. Sometimes it's entirely monetary. A lot of times they try to push towards these non-financial, sort of soft benefits. What does that business stack look like for the partner? What do they get out of all of this? Does their money come from the incentive, or does it come from the services, or how does that all work?
Yeah, again, you've got the sort of macro level of your co-sell, resell, refer, affiliates. That does cover all of them, depending on what the partner is looking for. But I think to go beyond that sort of mere transactional interactions that you've mentioned, to be successful, you have to differentiate, especially an indirect program. And for me, and in the partnership world, in the fintech world here in the EMEA space, for me, it was about driving sort of 6 key values that really drove our success and unlocked those new opportunities for growth. For us, culture was a big one. Culture is where we found a lot of people were drawn to us, were attracted to us, because it differentiated most other partners programs within the fintech industry. Didn't have essentially that sort of build to partner culture, and building that with intent. Mutual buy-in is a no-brainer. You have to have that. I mean, if you have to sort of quantify to qualify, if there's no vision or benefit or objective gaps, then you have to make sure that they're filled. Transparency is a big one as well. It can be shrouded in a little bit of mystery, the fintech sector at the best of times. So having that transparency is a differentiator. Making sure that there's collaboration and accountability there.
That transparency is what avoids the channel conflict between the direct and the indirect sellers.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, and making sure it is collaborative and accountable. You can differentiate with just very small changes on those foundational fronts. Corporate alignment, for example. Sometimes you're dealing with very small businesses and organizations, and sometimes you're dealing with very, very large enterprise and tier 1 level customers as well. So you want quick decisions and you want reduced time to execution. So making sure that you do get that mutual buy-in that we've talked about, that, and have that transparency and build that culture with a fantastic PX, is a breath of fresh air in the fintech world.
That's really interesting, because oftentimes you consider channel like trying to turn a cruise ship. It just doesn't happen very quickly. But you're saying that fintech actually has to act fast, and
it really does
make decisions fast. Akash, what questions do you have for Lincoln?
No, I
know that you work really closely with him.
So Vaughn, I think when Lincoln was sharing some of his thoughts on how to create value, I think a couple of things which I picked up from my own interaction with some of the fintech partnership leaders, and also going through some of the research reports being done by the likes of EY and PwC. So I think a couple of things that also came out right away are including how we can align on creating a joint value prop, especially when, and in fintech space, I mean, most of these companies form a very strategic partnership, and companies, and they may be a large companies, or partnership could be between a large or SMEs or MSME organization. So when both of their operational team get involved, so they should be having those discussions right from the outset, that what's the joint value prop look like? What are the strategic goals or objectives that we are trying to achieve, and how the incentive program look like for both the teams, right? So these are the 3 key points that I would like to expand what Lincoln said, and this right away came out in all those reports and discussion that I've had.
What do those joint value props look like?
I think
or Akash, either one of you.
Akash, go ahead.
Yeah, so I think I can share from my understanding the joint value prop look like what exactly you are trying to achieve out of relationship of this partnership. Let's say in next year or next quarter, right? So there has to be a clear goal, and it could be operational related goal. For example, one of the key problems that these partnerships face when companies form this partnership is partner onboarding, right? And it's a long process, and it happens due to stringent internal workflows, legacy platform, and growing complex needs. So it could be one of the joint value prop that needs to be considered, that hey, this is the first goal that we are going to achieve next quarter, and what
that's huge. Shrinking that time to value is absolutely massive.
That's okay. What else, Akash? I know that you've got lots of questions in this space. What else do you?
No, I think from question perspective, I think I want to pick Lincoln's brain on. I think I would like to take a step back, and I think we will all agree that adopting an ecosystem-driven approach is crucial in fintech partnerships. And I think we might have seen a lot of growth stories coming out across the world. For instance, the recent one is India's growth story of its thriving fintech ecosystem, and the country where it has recorded more than 100 billion digital transactions last year.
Hmm.
On the flip side, Lincoln, what do you say how fintech companies can be more proactive rather than reactive in adopting an ecosystem-driven approach, and that goes beyond just transactional elements? So, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think as we discussed, fintech is always considered a utility, so it kind of runs the gamut per se. But so startups, established FIs, regulators, software, hardware, tech providers, investors. We can drill down to micro levels of AI solutions and cybersecurity, etc. Customers themselves, they're all there. But I think the benefit of the fintech ecosystem, because they have those many sort of life cycle touch points. You've got agility. You've got that collaborative motions times with tech equals shrinking that time to value, and actually making sure that you have bespoke results based on what you're asking that tech to do. Market reach is huge because again, fintech is quite holistic and all encompassing and covers the globe. Your market reach is absolutely huge. Your network effect and scalability, that's at 10 times, simply because of the vertical that you're working in. Which is massive. You then become an expert on compliance, for example, working within those regulatory systems, and your ecosystem. You learn about those compliance mechanisms and things to do with risk mitigation, for example, and things like that. And ultimately, you get your end of the day. You end up at providing a good CX. That's what you want. You want to make sure that the end client is your North Star. When it comes to that, they're getting what they need when they need at the right time, in the right place for the right reasons. And as soon as you're getting that and you're implementing with intent, you're IDing those feature gaps we talked about that a potential joint value proposition can solve. You're becoming strategic and you're leveraging that intent.
Yeah, agree. I think Lincoln, while expanding on that, while writing our blog, I also found a couple of things which fintech companies are doing. For example, adopting a fintech marketplace-driven approach, right? Because most of these companies are cloud native, and so this is one of the ecosystem-driven strategies that most of these companies are adopting, and along with not only collaborating with big brands but also with small merchants. And at the same time, how these companies are collaborating and partnering more with RegTech companies, because this is what truly drives the compliance need, and they need to make sure they are continuously compliant by bringing all these different solution integration in order to create a value for end consumers. So these are the three things which I thought I'll share with the audience here.
This conversation's kind of blowing my mind a little bit. I knew it was complex, right? But when you start getting into risk and all the volume of transactions and all these different things that kind of go into it, let alone just the business proposition that the fintech has to provide just in what it does, it makes for a pretty complex ecosystem that would include, you're getting cyber in there, you're getting traditional SIs, there's just a million different things going on. One of my big points when I consult with the industry is to really clearly identify your ideal partner profile. Okay. How are you doing that in this, and how do you qualify them? With as much complexity as there is, how do you not just get yourself into a pickle?
Yeah, you can twist yourselves in knots, especially because again, you have probably an abundance of choice when it comes to that vertical. But it's about screwing down into what you're looking to provide the end client, especially from a joint value proposition with another partner. ICP. Coming to that point, Vaughan, you really do need to focus. If you're speaking to everyone, then you're speaking to no one. So you really have to make sure that, look, if let's say, for instance, we are concentrating on card present payments, So, when you go into restaurants or hotels or whoever it may be, and you physically have to do the transaction there, either by digital wallet or whatever it may be, do you then concentrate specifically on a hardware partnership, for example? We were a partner with Sharp, so we had a very strong, sticky joint value proposition. They would go in and install their point of sale systems, for example, in a chain of restaurants. But they were partners with us. We could do a better deal than a traditional larger organization within the fintech space. We would convert that lead, and then they would make a commission, MRR commission, based on converting that lead into a client. And we had about 45 sticky partners roughly that drove about 3,000 accounts to us in around 2.5 years doing exactly that.
Do they, so depending on the subscription length and different things like that, do these partners make money on the renewals?
Not particularly. It's usually just the transactions. The transactions themselves, they're very low margins in transactions. So you're talking a very high transaction volume, but you're talking a very, very low margin. So that's why where you make that margin essentially is by doing as many as you possibly can. Hence the reason why that you're aiming for, a couple of enterprise or tier 1 level partners, because that's where you're going to find the MMR and the ARR at the end of the day.
Okay. So what's the role, you're going to get this from me because we're into partner technology. What's the role of partner technology in the fintech partnerships? How does that play in? How's it being used?
What's
being used, I guess I'd add on top of that.
Yeah, no, it's a great call. I mean, payment gateways for us were the number one. So Mr. Bezos found that when he saw a 51% increase during the pandemic in his overall turnover, because everything went online. An online payment gateway and cross-border transactions went through the absolute roof. So that would be someone like Stripe or PayPal or Square, for example. AI is big. It's becoming a mega trend in fintech. For things like fraud detection, risk management, and even just as simple as customer service via chatbots. Cloud computing is a big one. I think, as Akash was talking about earlier on, if you're mixing marketplace, which is very Gen Z buyer's journey space at the moment, crossed with AI, crossed with cloud, and that's essentially where the market's going. But fintech's been living there for probably a little bit longer, just simply because they're a tech-driven vertical. So cloud computing, in the sense of data storage and application deployment, has been there for many years. Open banking and APIs is a really big one. That push-pull data between data sharing, essentially open banking, for those who don't know, is data sharing between financial institutions and third-party integrations, is absolutely huge. So we see that tech being deployed throughout CRMs, obviously, identity verification, which is KYC and KYB, know your business and know your customer, etc.
Okay, Akash, we're running out of time. Let's have you fire off any final questions, and then I've got one last one for Lincoln that should take very little time.
Actually, I don't have a question, but rather a follow-up statement, what Lincoln said on the partner technology. So from partners tech point of view, I personally think that the platform like MindMatrix has the potential to shrink the overall partner onboarding process, which is one of the biggest challenge in fintech partnership. And beyond that, if you go ahead, it helps you monitor and track all the partner KPIs, because majority of these companies, which also came, and this data also came out in EY's report, that they struggle to track and monitor and establish those KPI metrics that they want to monitor with every partnership. So this is where any platforms like MindMatrix come in and help facilitate all these processes when you have a fintech partnership. So this is my 2 cents I wanted to add. Now you got 1 minute. You can wrap up the session.
1 minute. Here it is. I like to wrap up these calls with your 3 best practices for your space. Okay. If you walked away from this call and you had 3 things that everyone should remember, and you were able to spout those out in 30 seconds, what would they be?
Are you talking about fintech space or partnerships in general?
Well, just with your experience operating in fintech and in partnerships, what are the 3 things that you would want people to know about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Shrink that time to value, as we said. Absolutely huge. You got to do it. People are looking for deal size, deal velocity, deal consistency. That's what they're looking for. Definitely drive that partner experience, because that's what's going to keep you long term, and also making sure that you are providing as more value than expected.
Nice. I love it. Well, thanks for the time. This was great. I really appreciated, for me, the education and for the value to the listeners. So really good call. Thank you, Lincoln, and thank you, Akash. And we
Thanks,
will
everyone.
see you all next time. Take care.
Brilliant. Thank you,
Bye.
guys. See you later.